Have you guys heard that Steven Crowder has received his second strike from YouTube? He is suspended for 2 weeks, which means that's the end of Steven Crowder on YouTube for the rest of this year. And if he receives one more strike, then goodbye, Crowder. Well, one more strike within a 90-day period, then that is goodbye for Crowder for good. I
think he wants to get banned on some level.
Oh yeah, no, he's self-canceling now, so he can get a deal at like Rumble or whatever, like the app du jour is. But like,
he's already streaming on Rumble though, and he's got like over 5.5 million subscribers on YouTube. I don't know. I feel like that'd be a big hit to take. Honestly, I don't think whatever short-term press you'd get from that would make up for 5.5 million subscribers he's going to lose. To be honest, I mean. He's got a really big channel. It
is a big channel.
I'm not saying he's actively trying to. I'm just saying he wants to court that audience and he'll push it to the limit. And if he gets banned, then it's like a whole new.
Well, he might see the writing
frontier
on the wall and just kind of like, what is this most recent ban over, Binder? Do you know?
Well, I looked into it because the YouTube obviously doesn't tell you. Like he even posted the message he received, like the email he received from YouTube notifying him about the strike. It just says that he broke his hate speech policy. And then when I reached out to YouTube, they told me that it was over repeated targeting of people in the LGBTQ community. And so I viewed the removed live stream episode he did that obviously received the strike because it's no longer up. And it's also mentioned in that email that he shared. And I watched the whole episode, unfortunately for me. And from what it appears, one of two segments, possibly both, would have fit that description of targeting the LGBT community. And that is, one, he started the episode with a music video to a holiday parody song, which is like a country singer singing about running into an ex-girlfriend who, surprise, surprise, guys, transitioned into being a transgender man. And that's what that whole song and music video is about. And then later on, they discussed the J.K. Rowling tweet where she got all upset about the fact that police in, I believe, Scotland are going to start logging rapists as their preferred, gender identity. Which obviously J.K. Rowling then went ahead and tweeted some very anti-trans stuff, which Crowder and his crew had a field day with.
Well, then let's talk about Crowder. We can get to that clip if you'd like, Matt.
Yeah, let's do it, because might be the last time we hear from Crowder for the year.
Yeah, so Crowder, as Matt just laid out, has now received his second strike from YouTube and is skating on thin ice. But he has to brand himself not just as a belligerent racist and as somebody who seems to have a very open and uncomfortable relationship with his own sexuality and his own presentation of masculinity. No. He also has to join the COVID denial crowd, but put a comedic twist on it. Here he is floating the idea of hosting Omicron parties because conservatives now think it's so awesome to purposefully get COVID.
But I might have Omnicorp.
Right. Yeah, it's a pandemic.
I don't know what it is. I normally get a sinus infection this time of year, so I got a little bit of pressure right here.
Mm-hmm.
And but I still look good, and that's really all that matters.
Dung, 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 dung. Wait, is that Vanilla Ice or is it yes to both? Okay,
it's Bowie.
It's not true. It was original.
Yeah. Under pressure.
It was Bowie and Queen.
Yes. Oh, it was Queen.
Yes,
Queen and Bowie.
Yeah. All right. Before we move on,
and Jangled Out of a Window by
this mentally unstable. Let me know what you guys gonna have an Omicron party? I think we should have an Omicron party.
Yeah.
Throw a party with as many people as humanly possible.
Sharing is caring.
Lick a popsicle stick, do popsicle sticks, spit brothers.
What are we, 5 again?
Why? Because this is the United States of America. I love how this, the unvaccinated only kill themselves. Great. Let me commit I wrote my suicide letter out. I wrote it out,
Yeah.
and I said, Gerald gets nothing. He gets my old crappy boombox, but it doesn't
You have
work.
a boombox?
But I wrote, look, there is a 0.004% chance of this working, and unfortunately, it's set at a timed release on my computer that goes out as an automatic send, and I just said horrible things.
Well, you should probably call that.
Things I can't take back. Skunked again by Omicron.
The show is so bad. Like, this, put aside whatever they're even talking about, whatever topic of the day, whether it's this obsession with transgender people or trying to spread bullshit about COVID or whatever they're talking about in any given day. It's just such a bad show. Like, unfunny. Just their banter isn't interesting. It isn't even delivered smoothly. Yeah. I mean, it's just horrible content, just really bad stuff.
And in some ways, I think you're right, Matt, and that's kind of not necessarily the point, but that's the draw of being one of these like right-wing comedian types like Owen Benjamin, where there's such a dearth of comedians who align themselves with the far right, forgetting like neoliberal or just generally like centrist comedians or whatever SNL is doing nowadays. There are just so few of those like, IDW far right adjacent comedians that they're just desperate to draw any of them in, to give themselves the illusion that they have like a holistic, like well-rounded culture, and it's not just grievance. And so, all of his like terrible skits are received way more warmly because that's the only content out there.
But it's not even a skit. Like, as Matt was saying, I mean, them just riffing on whether Under Pressure was by Queen or not.
Oh, not that part. I mean, his other like terrible, like, characters he plays, like his like racist Asian like delivery guy or something.
Or
I think he has one. Oh, go ahead.
7 different characters where he gets to dress up like a woman. I mean, there's a variety of those, and none of those are funny either.
It's very 2003. Like, I mean, honestly, it's very like Joanna Man, a lot of his jokes. And you're like, okay, well, it's 2021 now. You gotta like evolve a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. That, I guess, was the second day in a row that he floated these Omicron parties. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's the new thing.
You guys covered it yesterday?
Yeah, it sounded like almost an identical clip, but it was a different one.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're really hanging their hat on that. So.
I mean, this is the same old like anti-vaxxer conspiratorial bullshit that's existed well before COVID. I remember hearing many, many years ago, like about, and this is something that was typically connected with like, more sort of like hippies than conservatives, where you would hold parties to get your children together to specifically get your children sick with like whatever, chicken pox or whatever, just so you wouldn't have to get vaccinated or whatever they were trying to avoid, or, whatever crazy beliefs they had in terms of why getting your child sick all at the same time together would be good for them. It's like the same old shit rehashed. They're not even original when it comes to their own, bad ideas.
Well, I mean,
but
no, the idea that, I think that there is a conservative strain of thinking that is obsessed with things only being natural, and they decide what's natural and what's not. And that's why there's like that anti-vaccine contingent, right? Because a disease is natural, a virus is natural, and if it comes into you, well, that's, I guess, what God intended or what was supposed to happen. Like, ignoring the fact that there has been a long trail of blood throughout history of, say, Europeans bringing diseases over to different nations and wiping out millions of people and certain populations. Like, the fact that we have gotten to a point where we can mitigate that, they don't have the historical understanding or like the actual curiosity to look into it, and that's like, I mean, that's also why they're upset. They attack trans people, right? It's a way to say, oh, this is unnatural, and like leftists are taking us away from the way that society should be as God intended, organized.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think both you made really important points. Just to address the one in order, Matt's and then Emma's. I think that there is that genealogy of like folk medicine that comes from like suburban 1950s as like Leave It to Beaver. We're going to have a chicken pox party and make sure all our kids are exposed, so X, Y, and Z doesn't happen later in life or whatever. But it's brushing up with a lot of a newer, maybe, I don't know how which you could like assign it to, but like this idea amongst the right of like politics is triggering liberals, and so much of their politics now involves like actively going out of their way to not necessarily just not get vaccinated or not wear a mask, but to constantly rub it in the face of people who feel as though that that's what they should be doing, because that's, you know, epidemiology. And, you know, back in, you know, the previous pre-COVID anti-vaxxers that weren't so enmeshed with this kind of trigger to lib online right-wing blogosphere or whatever, you know, they were involved in anti-vaxxer practices in their own little community, but it felt much less like, you know, for the most part, they were as interested in doing these kinds of performative actions that by necessity, because it's an airborne disease, inherently make them more, you know, likely to get disease, more likely to get infected or infect others. You know, like they go out of their way to make sure, you know, that they're having these like pox parties and you know, and going unmasked to the club. It's like, it's just the worst aspects of both coming into one thing together. And then to, you know, to Emma's point, I think at, you know, at the most basic level, they don't necessarily have an interest in American history to like where this, you know, our, you know, how any of our progress has been made, because it's inherently anti-conservative. You know, it inherently involves like you know, the American government or, you know, in the most basic sense, but like, you know, it inherently involves like the American government stepping in and like funding vaccine research or like, you know, mandating things. And so it, you know, you have to adopt a very high school C in history level understanding of history, and also a very high school history, or rather high school C level understanding of science and biology in order to, you know, continue to believe in these myths that are being constantly, you know, eroded by both science and just like people doing that work at levels beyond like high school.